Hey, it's me, Big P, and I wanted to go over the journey my character went through on the first day of the league. I'm gonna call it day 1.5 because Friday never happened. I basically spent all the time that I would normally spend just playing, trying to get through the X, and basically stopped after I tried to kill Azaro 4 times, and it rolled back, and it was just far too frustrating. So I went to bed kind of early in around Act 6. And now here after the second day on Saturday, I streamed a little bit, but ended up just kind of watching other people stream and just playing around doing whatever, just doing some early mapping, and ended up with the character as it stands now, which is incredibly different than what I planned on doing. I'm kind of just gonna run a map um, without any real scary damage modifiers or anything like that. It's just reduced damage from extra crits. That's going to affect our build. I'm going to go over why I swapped into what I swapped into, which is cast on crit Exsanguinate with the Cyclone. Um, long story short, I kind of really underestimated the mechanics of the league and how it would be kind of a similar clusterfuck to Ritual. Looking back, it's kind of obvious that, everything's going to be running at you, and you're not going to have much time to DPS down and things like that. And, kiting is a huge part of the league mechanic, but it's way easier to kite if you can DPS and kite at the same time, a la Blade Vortex or, of course, Cyclone. One of these days, Cyclone will stop being the premier skill, but, this is not that day. This is not that league. I think maybe hopefully we can do an ultimatum all the way through so we can show you exactly why. I'll go over the tree after. I kind of spent the day farming up, made 100 chaos, spent 100 chaos, that sort of deal. I thought I was going to go into the Aracali's Fang poison spider build I had before. Because that was one that was very tanky and incorporated a shield and stuff like that, which definitely was going to be a necessity. I'm not even close to block capped. I'm not glancing blows or anything like that, but just the fact that you're using a shield instead of, for example, a poet's pen, you're going to be a little bit tankier. And one of the fail states in the league mechanic, high league mechanic, is death. So staying alive is at a premium. So I think a lot of people are, from what I can tell from early discussion, find like a lot of things like 2-button builds, perhaps like Detonate Dead Inquisitor or Bladefall Blade Blast Inquisitor, having a bit of trouble staying alive or just getting their combo off before they die. In things like the ultimatums, which are absolute clusterfucks. And let me tell you right now, if you think the in-map ultimatums are clusterfucks, wait till you try an inscribed ultimatum. I was able to do one that doubled my 5 vol orbs by the skin of my teeth. I didn't even try to alch it, but I barely made it without doing that. And so let's give this one a try. Yes, you are, sir. Let's do Ruin. So something like Ruin is really easy to avoid when you're cycloning. They actually did a pretty good job in terms of visual clarity for the Ruin monsters. Armageddon brand damage, we'll go for that. Most of the stuff is either blue or yellow. Well, yeah, the Ruin stuff is blue. I guess that little blue tornado down there is. I already have 2 Ruin. Yikes. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going all the way just to try it. But yeah, it's something like Exsanguinate. Some people have been spell slinging it. Some people have been self-casting it. I actually leveled with self-casting it, and the whole reason I swapped into cast on crit Exsanguinate was because I basically threw it into my Orb of Stormblast mine setup at level 1 or whatever level I came at with Unleash, and it was just destroying stuff like I've never seen before. Basically, it's the new Blade Vortex. My relationship with Blade Vortex is over, and Exsanguinate is my new best friend. Oh yeah, there's green too. You gotta watch out for the green. choking my asthma. I think right now the build is not wanting for damage, but because it is melee and Exsanguinate does not have chain, I'm not going to put chain in my links. Not going to do it. I refuse to. People really need to read that chain gem because that's a lot of damage you're missing out on just for a little bit of clear speed. And if you can make it up in another way, I would probably look to do that. Ah, see, I touched the ruin. I was talking about how good it looked. But what are you gonna do? I mean, it's a clusterfuck. What do you want me to do? I don't know if they're a little overtuned. I can only imagine that my friends who've had performance issues are going to end up like crashing at like, you know, the later portions of it and have it feel really bad. So before I go into the boss, let's go over my two like kind of sub skills. The setup for it is very quick. Basically the two things I'd cast is Arcanus Brand, and that's linked with Power Charge on Critical, and Blade Blast actually works. It gives you the power charges, not your brand the power charges or whatever. And Vulnerability, which is I didn't even realize that was getting plus levels from our Cold Iron Point, which I spent about 40 chaos on yesterday, so it might be up or down based on whatever the hell goes on. I don't know if Mathfuls, I think Mathfuls may be using it, so, you know, buy yours now, I guess. But yeah, you throw this Arcanus Brand down, and it will cast Blade Blast, which unnerves the enemy. I should probably level that, because I do have a lot of decks. Yeah, sure, why the fuck not? Vulnerability is just the physical damage. You're doing completely physical damage in this build, so it's really helpful for it. And then the other buff we're using is, again, a buff, the Corrupting Fever that's buffed as a spell, physical spell by Cold Iron Point. And I was using this as a one link, and it was still pretty effective, but if you link it with stuff like Brutality and Efficacy and Swift Affliction, it's going to cost you a lot of life. And I think something like Inquisitor is probably the only one of the few ascendancies that can kind of just get away with it. Even then, it's a little like, eh. It's nice to be able to use all that life regen before you get something like Corrupted Soul on Inquisitor. That normally is just going to your ES before, and I don't have that much ES. I actually spec in and out. The tree's very stretched. Just wait till I show you. But yeah, Corrupting Fever. I used to have it on my left click, but that's not really a good idea for obvious reasons. You want, if you're lazy, you maybe keep it on a one link if you want to keep it there. But I keep it on mouse 4 or middle mouse button. You pop that. That's an instant cast, so you don't really have to worry about that. And Arcanus Brand is nice because keeping a totem alive in an ultimatum is quite a challenge. I'm surprised it's not one of the challenges of the league. But yeah, Arcanus Brand, they don't last very long. But all you're looking for is basically one unnerve and one vulnerability cast to get off. I was trying to be cheeky and do like Hex Touch with the Blade Blast for the vulnerability, but that doesn't work. I don't know why. It just doesn't. So it does cycle between Blade Blast and casting vulnerability itself. It's a little clunky. It takes a little bit of time to get up, but check it out. So you cast a few here. Hopefully it touches them. It did not. Oh no, it did. Okay. But yeah, that was the boss, I guess. Before the Cold Iron Points and stuff like that, you know, the way that these physical spell gems work is that if you can get over leveled, like I'm still leveling the gem, I think it's 19 right now technically, yeah, 19, and so I get a level 22 gem. The damage is looking quite good. This is only a tier 3 map. I'm going to look into pushing a lot today. I'm probably not even going to sleep tonight just because the build, now that I've got it in working condition, I want to get an actual 6-link chest piece, not a tabby. I want to get some good rings because I'm just kind of farming with Thief's Torment while I'm leveling. Probably I'll swap out around 90 when I have some good stuff. I'm not even sure what I'm going to be looking for. Just like it's kind of a weird build, and let's go over the rest of it now. You can very easily level with this and maybe even go into cast on crit very early. Before I had the Cold Iron Point, I had a Heartseeker. I think I sold it, but Heartseeker is like a rune dagger that has spell damage and then gives your spells Culling Strike. Even for self-cast, it's very nice. But for something like Cyclone, it's good. I think it has a good base attack speed. Astramentus is going to be hard to beat for a number of reasons. When you like to throw in like kind of like cheeky dex gems here and there into your build, your dex requirement is going to go up, and it feels bad to waste you know, a point here, a point here. on like 30 dex nodes, especially since we're going into dex already. Which probably shouldn't go into entropy since we are scaling. Although we're using a lot of damage over time with the build, it's just physical damage over time that can be scaled on the initial hit with physical damage. So as we go into stuff like Master of Force, Will of Blades, I initially came down here very early because I thought we'd be spell slinging it, but you can just get way more damage out with the Exsanguinate. I should have kept this open so you can see how it triggers. So the cooldown time, basically the way that you would min-max a build like this is you would probably get some cooldown reduction, although I don't know if we're fully hitting it right now. The attacks per second is 5.6, so you do some math, and it's like, what? That would be a little less than, you're probably within like 1/100th of a second of, min-maxing it for our purposes. You may say like, oh, but, the max stacks that this can have is what, 3? Yeah, so the physical damage over time debuff, it lasts for 1.3 seconds. So you're over capping that, but that's fine because there's a bunch of actual damage that's being done when the Exsanguinate hits. And, it's not all dot, you know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of front-loaded damage and then you get a debuff in addition to something like Corrupting Fever. I've seen a lot of people do, a lot of interesting ways to proc this as much as they can. But it's not going to get better than Cyclone. Sorry, guys. It just doesn't get better than Cyclone. 5 attacks per second. And on each of those attacks that crit, I'm also doing a hit with Exsanguinate, which might shotgun or something. I don't think it does. Unleash definitely was shotgunning, and that was very nice to level with. If you have a 4-link, you can do Exsanguinate, Efficacy, Unleash, and then your choice of Brutality. There's a lot of ways, actually, to play with these spells. I'm looking forward to a lot of other sorts of builds that come out, because I mean it's the new physical spells, guys. They're incredibly. I'm gonna say they're a little overtuned. They felt amazing while leveling with 0 investment. I basically respec'd my entire tree into what you see now because I was just so smitten with those spells. I guess that includes going for these wheels here. Don't know if I actually need Relentless. It's just a lot of good damage. And then Regen is double dipped on Inquisitor. If you have stunned an enemy recently, though, I don't know how consistent that's going to be on, like, just bossing. I don't think I'm stunning bosses. But regardless, yeah, I was going through here, but then, you have to go through to balance your strength and int. I just love having 500 even strength. I wish I could get 3 intelligence somewhere. I wish I was a little bit smarter. Oh, I guess I could do fuck, whatever. But you don't worry about it. I don't know if the way that crit works when you're scaling it with the Righteous Providence is you kind of just balance your strength and intelligence, and then you'll have I right now have 497% generic increased critical strike chance. That's both for my spell that I'm casting, not casting, triggering with my cast on crit with the attack, and that applies to the attack as well. So with nothing up, we have a almost 60% crit chance on the spell, and slightly over 50% crit chance with the attack. So that's pretty good with the Diamond Flask. However, I will say that just because you're rolling 50% twice doesn't make it 100%. That's not how it works. So every little bit that you can get over the 50%, it's going to help with consistency, and obviously will help when your flasks are down. That's why before you have a lot, it's going to be hard to run something like Controlled Destruction without like insane gear. Maybe with like a chest that like can boost your attack crit or something, like the base attack crit, something like that. That's probably gear we're going to work into, but it's very doable with a tabula. Even with the 5-link, you could probably drop Cruelty. I don't know if Cruelty is actually, it's very hard to tell how much this is actually helping, but it does support both the Cyclone and the Exsanguinate, which makes me, I don't know, it's probably proccing on the smaller hit of the Cyclone, you know what I mean? Because that's more, I don't know, it's hard to say. Cruelty is can grant up to 50% more damage over time, which sounds incredible, but it's based on the amount of damage in the hit which grants it. And we're constantly overriding that hit. I feel like there's basically no way to really figure out how much it's actually working, but I can only imagine that on bosses, it's not going to be that much. So I would look to replace this with something like Controlled Destruction, but that would be very hard to get away with in a cast on crit setup. It would just make it feel very inconsistent. So I'll probably look into a number of other things, leveling some other gems that, like what, maybe increased crit. I don't know if, I really don't think we're going to be able to do Controlled Destruction because it does nothing as a damage support for the Cyclone. Not that we're scaling damage anyway. With that, it's a lot more spell damage, which nicely affects Exsanguinate's damage over time modifier. Just pretty much any spell damage you're getting on the tree or in other places is going to be affecting the dot and the initial hit, which is pretty nice. But speaking of scaling damage, another thing I like about this build in its current state is that I kind of don't give a shit about my Uber Lab. I'm going to get a little bit of attack and cast speed here, whoopity-doo, and then I'll get Battle Mage and Instruments of Virtue. I'm going to boost my attack damage from, a measly 4k to whatever the hell else it goes, and then Battle Mage with something like a Cold Iron Point, which is a baby rune dagger. It's going to add what? Add it equal to the damage of your main hand spell up. Like, fortunately, the effectiveness of added damage on Exsanguinate is insane. It's almost 200%. Like, this is like on the par with like two-handed slam skills effectiveness of damage. I don't know what the fuck GGG is thinking with something like this. Maybe it doesn't work in the same way that I'm thinking, but it seems insane every little bit. I mean, the base damage here is just, 1,000 for a level 22 gem. That's very respectable. And then you look at the tooltip damage, which you should never look at, and it's almost 50k per use. And that's not really, I don't know. It's wild. It seems very strong. But yeah, Uber Lab, take it, leave it. Pious Path and Righteous Providence are absolute killers. I know Captain Lance is doing a version of Cast on Crit Reap. His looks really good too. I think he's going into Battle Mage as well, but you would have the option of doing something like Augury of Penitence or Inevitable Judgment, depending on what you'd want to do. And Fanaticism exists, and that's about it. What else do I want to go into? The tree is extremely scuffed. I probably will either want to connect through this way or through this way. I thought I was going to use the Unleash spells here because I thought maybe I would self-cast it instead. And I thought I was going to be using this elemental damage cluster jewel. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit a cluster jewel into here now, because between having to go for this stuff here, and I'm probably going to get Blood Drinker just because it's very good, and then a jewel socket here or there, I don't know if it's going to work. But let me go over my gear real quick. Cold Iron Point I bought for about 40 chaos. It is the Cold Iron Point, plus to level of physical spell gems. I mean, hopefully you've seen this before and you understand how absolutely insane it could be for a physical spell like Exsanguinate. It's been great for, the blade skills, the blade spells, and yeah, that's about it. That's all I have to say, because it doesn't have much in terms of mods and plus the level of spells. I mean, I've been looking for that on my shield, which was an old shield. I liked it because it had cast speed and it's got decent life, and I just threw whatever. It doesn't have an open suffix. I put mana on there because the auras we're using, like this, we can go over here, are Vitality. Even after the nerf, you're still double dipping on it as Inquisitor with Pious Path, so it's really good. Zealotry is fantastic. One of the concerns I had with my previous plan for the build was that well, I would be standing still a lot every time I attacked. And even now, every time you flame dash, you're proccing the consecrated ground. But you don't create consecrated ground. I want to specifically go over the wording of Pious Path, or is it? Yeah, so you have consecrated ground while you're stationary. So you create that consecrated ground around you. We're not scaling area of effect, so it's not actually that big. Effects of consecrated ground you create linger for 4 seconds. The effects linger. That doesn't mean that consecrated ground exists around you for 4 seconds. The effects, be it the recovery and whatever else, on you linger. So that's recovery and all that stuff. In order to proc Consecrated Ground on stuff that's further out, basically Exsanguinate gives you a little bit more reach. It's kind of a melee spell. But basically all I wanted to say is don't just assume that everything is always on Pious Path, especially if you aren't running Zealotry. If you're running something where you're like a melee skill and or like a melee spell and you're self-casting or DPSing like right up on something, you don't really have to worry about it. But yeah, but Zealotry also gives you spell crit chance and then a big fat more spell damage. My build is actually going to be able to run with my friends pretty nicely because I'm also running a very high level of precision, because with cast on crit, so your chance to hit is going to affect your DPS. That's so much so that I'm actually going into depth perception here, and I'm hoping that between that and the last few levels of precision will bring me up to, it's probably not going to be 100%. This scales to whatever, like the last map tier or whatever level zone you were in. So yeah, it's you know, you're gonna want, oh, another sacrifice spell orbs. You're gonna want to bring that dex up. I guess the dex doesn't really matter. It's you need accuracy rating and stuff like that. Hopefully, these will be my next 3 points, and we'll see. I'm going to do a full, more like kind of cohesive build guide on how to start this from the ground up, because it is doable. You can transfer from self-cast into cast on crit with basically nothing. I mean, I've said before that cast on crit is sort of it's still a spell build, even though it has a couple more moving parts, and you know, it's easier, probably a little easier to do on something like Assassin. Inquisitor is still a premier crit ascendancy with that 1-point wonder and what is it, Righteous Providence. It's real nice. Obviously, it helps when you can buy yourself an Astramentus and then, you know, I anointed Heartseeker, because all the crit in the world doesn't matter if you don't have multiplier, and we lost actually a lot of crit multiplier on, whatchamacallit, on the Inquisitor Ascendancy. Not like a lot, and with the physical spell, we wouldn't actually be able to use it, so. What else? This is just a random belt. I'm looking for belts. I might go for a replica soul tether, but I might also need to craft some cooldown recovery on these two if it really ends up being necessary for the damage to min-max it, but I don't know. Gloves or whatever as well. I guess I should go over the main links. Exsanguinate, cast on crit, cyclone, efficacy. This would be the 4 link if you really wanted to force it. 5th would probably be brutality. And then Cruelty, as I said before, I'm kind of iffy on. Maybe I'll look for some other funky options there. Corrupting Fever. You can put this in a 1 link on on a lot of different builds, honestly, and it'll probably do some good. Brutality, Efficacy, and Swift Affliction all affect it because it's a duration fizz dot thing. It's not a huge buff, and it's not affected by spell damage modifiers like Exsanguinate is, but that's fine. Frost Shield, cast when damage taken, increased area of effect. This is kind of shitty. It's just kind of nice to... I might self-cast a Frost Shield, maybe even put it on my left click, although that kind of makes me scared because it's not instant. You do have to cast it. But it would make it so that I can use the really high level one that I'm not leveling in my offhand anymore, so maybe not. Yeah, I actually need a guard skill. Even with increased area of effect on the Frost Shield, it's not that big. I don't really have enough ES to make it kind of worthwhile. So I might swap this like right after this video. And then Flame Dash, Arcane Surge, and Second Wind. I could probably boost this Arcane Surge a bit. You know, you just basically do it for 34 mana. Yeah, I could get a couple levels up on that. But you definitely want to move skill even with the Cyclone in this league. The helmet is total crap. I think I just used this to fix a lot of res, but helmet might be somewhere where we can actually get a decent bit of damage. Not exactly sure how, but we'll see. And Thief's Torment is just a leveling ring. Basically, I would say the first thing to go for is, well, probably a 6 link, like a nice cheap tabby. Astramentus is going to help if you don't, if you want to bring that crit up once you get into your 3rd lab, and you really, if you feel like your crit's not good enough, you can go into that. Cold Iron Point, depending on how expensive it might be. I mean, it's going to be hard to beat. I don't know if I'm going to even be able to, if I spend all league crafting, if I'm going to be able to beat something like this. It's just, global crit. That's both our spell and our attack, and then plus the level. My goodness, it's good. And Flask, you don't have to worry about shit on Inquisitor. I didn't roll any of these. This is garbage. I really do want an Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline because we are a build that relies on movement speed. But this is an item level 4 flask, so it can't really roll the juicy stuff. I was considering maybe going for the Stampede and then dropping all movement speed flasks because just to have that sort of consistency. You can kind of do that on a Cyclone build, and then maybe we can get some fun flasks in here. What they would be, I'm not entirely sure. Probably the usual suspects like, the bullshit Cinder Swallow Urn, Bottled Faith, all that garbage that is really expensive. But you can get it done with, I would definitely have a Diamond Flask somewhere on a build. That's a crit build. I got Wording, and then that's all you need because you're immune to all elemental ailments forever. You would have to, even if you pass, so why don't you take a look at the Consecrated Ground while you're cycloning. If you stop, even for a second while cycloning, it refreshes it. But you can actually, I love my nice dark hideout. You can really see the Consecrated Ground. So check it out. So the Consecrated Ground is here, and it's happening, and then it disappears as soon as you start moving. So I don't know. Creating the Consecrated Ground with Zealotry, I didn't finish going over the auras. Precision, and then Herald of Purity, another thing that's boosted by the Cold Iron Point. This thing is just doing work all over this build. So yeah, this is already almost a half an hour long video, but that's fine. This is more of a rambling sort of take on the first day and a half, let's call it, of the league start. Overall, I like the league very much. So much so that I might do a video kind of dissecting why I like it so much. We'll see after a full day of play like I'm about to do. If I'm still so crazy about it, maybe it will get a little grating and a little more difficult, but I don't think so. It seems like a winner, so as far as I'm concerned, Friday never happened. It's just too much to deal with, even with something like the priority streamer queue. It probably wouldn't have been that big an issue if people could get in the game and stay in the game. People probably wouldn't have even cared and noticed. But either way, thanks for watching the vid. I'm going to have a way more concise build guide. I might even try and edit a video, probably in the same way Mathel does, where I have a bunch of gameplay footage, although the gameplay footage itself isn't like that. I don't know, it's a Cyclone build. I'm a fucking genius. It's Cyclone. Wow. Who would have thought that Cyclone would be good in 2021? So yeah, thanks for watching. Hit the like and the sub, and I'm gonna be live on Twitch for kind of a marathon. It's like Sunday afternoon right now. The sleep schedule has been absolutely annihilated because I was kind of staying up to see if the servers would go on Friday, and then Saturday was kind of weird, so whatever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.